In a sequel to the Crea Gavlach, we learn about the Seacht Nrád Éachna, or 7 grades of wisdom, referring to the various stages of progression a pupil went through as they developed in their studies. A similar process was used in the various different schools. Quote, "The degrees of wisdom of the church correspond with the degrees of the poets and of the storytellers, that is, of the lay schools. But wisdom is the mother of each profession of them, and it is from her hand they all drink." We will now explore these 7 grades as they related to the Fili or poetry schools. The curriculum of the Fili lasted 12 years, in which Ogham, alphabets of understanding, tales, composition, philosophy, and other standard learning requirements were met. Having completed a basic first-year elementary level, a student made their way through the following grades. The first grade, the Foclach, or word maker. The second, Macfermage, meaning to set down, or a son of composition. The third, a Dos, meaning a young bush or tree. The fourth, Canna or Cano, a wolf cub or a whelp. The fifth, Clee, meaning a pillar. The sixth, Onru, the noble stream or the master warrior. And the 7th or highest grade was the Olive, meaning professor or doctor. A student in year 1 was called an Oblair, meaning an elementary student. The course of study consisted of 50 ohms or alphabets, elementary grammar, and 20 tales. As they progressed through the grades, they gradually increased the number of poems and tales which they had to know by heart. At the end of the training, this number would reach 350 individual stories and poems, the details of which had to be specific and there were no room for errors. Having completed his first year of elementary training, a student reached the first grade of wisdom when he became a Foclach during his second year. So in year 2, he entered the grade of Foclach, meaning a word maker. This course of study consisted of another 50 ohms, 6 easy lessons in natural philosophy, a number of specific and introductory poems, between 20 and 30 different tales, a type of grammar called the Oracep na Níochna, and he composed poems in a metre called Dean. The customary honour price for a member of this grade was a heifer, and he was allowed to travel with 2 attendants. In his 3rd year he became a Macfermage, meaning to set down, or a son of composition, so called because he is set to learn an art from his boyhood. The course of his study consists of another 50 ohms, 6 minor lessons in moral philosophy, diphthongal combinations, certain specified poems, and 40 tales. In year 4 he entered the grade of Dos, meaning a young bush or a tree. The course of study included the Brehon Law, a legal manuscript dealing with the judgments of the privileged classes. He also had to know 20 Iman, poems with couplets sharing form and meaning, and he had to learn another 50 tales. In year 5, the Cano, meaning the wolf cub or the whelp, his course of study included a critical analysis of Gaelic articles, adverbs, and other grammatical niceties, and he also had to learn 60 more tales. In year 6 he became a Clee, or a pillar. Now maturing in his education, he is strong and straight, he elevates and is elevated, he protects and is protected, and is powerful from floor to ridge. His course of study included the secret language of the poets, 40 poems of this type called Nua, or twins, and between 70 and 80 additional tales. In year 7 he began the grade of Onru, meaning noble stream. That is to say, a stream of pleasing praise issuing from him, and a stream of wealth to him, in payments and presents for his poetry and learning. The noble stream actually lasted 3 years. In year 7 the course of study included the Brosnacha, which were miscellanies or collections assigned to the professor, and the laws or special styles of bardic poetry. In year 8 he had to learn prosody, a very complicated study, glosses, that is the meaning of obsolete and obscure Gaelic words, illumination of song, the illumination of knowledge, extempore incantation, and the Din Shenicus, which was the historical and the mythology behind the place names and topography of Ireland. In his 9th year, he learned Senate, or poems of ancient wisdom, Luska, which were chants that had swinging and rhythmic oscillation, Nena, or truth-saying, Luchraid, or warding and shielding, Riecht, or spells, Shrew, or veneration and calling of the ancestors, Dulifede, or wisdom tales, and he had to be master of 175 total tales between this and the next 2 years. In the 10th year of study he left the noble stream and began the process of becoming an Ullov, which also lasted 3 years. In year 10 the course of study included a further number of compositions and a portion of the 175 tales he was still learning. In year 11 the course of study consisted of 100 compositions of Anawan, which meant to use the breath in magical toning. And finally, in year 12, a student had progressed through the grades and has become an Ullov. The Ullov of wisdom or learning teaches the 4 departments of filiocht or knowledge without ignorance of them. The Ullov's course of study consisted of 120 ketals, which were religious chants, the 4 arts of poetry, 175 onru, or glorious victories. During this year and the 2 previous, he has to memorize and master the 175 tales together with the 175 onru, the glorious victories. This completes the 350 tales that they had to learn by heart. If completed satisfactorily, the student graduated from the grade of onru, or noble stream, and became an Ullov, or professor. There are 3 key designations for an Ullov. The first was Ullov, meaning a professor or doctor. The second was Eichas, meaning a man of learning. And the third was a Fili, meaning a poet. The Ullov was entitled to sit at the king's table as an honoured guest. In point of knowledge he was qualified to answer all questions in the 4 great departments of learning, that is, in poetry, literature, history, and the equivalent of a legal degree in canon and civil law. He was entitled to bring 24 persons in his retinue, and neither he nor they could be denied food without incurring a severe penalty, which was 1/7 of the fine that was due in the case of his death, his honour price. One of the functions and rights was to be in the bosom of his disciples, always imparting knowledge to them on all suitable occasions. Ullov was the title of the highest degree in any art or profession. Thus we read of an olive poet, or an olive builder, or an olive goldsmith, or an olive physician, an olive lawyer, and so on. Just as we have in modern times a doctor of law, or of music, of literature, philosophy, and medicine, etc. In order to attain the degree of Ullov, a candidate had to graduate through all the lower steps, and for this final degree he had to submit his work, whether literary compositions or any other performance, to some eminent Ullov who was selected as judge. This Ullov made a report to the king of the territories, not only on the candidate's work, but also on his general character, whether he was upright, free from unjust dealings, and pure in conduct and word, that is, free from immorality, bloodshed, and abuse of others. If the report was favourable, the king formally conferred the degree.